Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the breakout session on Unleashing Potential, Strategies to Break Barriers for the Young Professionals. I want to go over a few housekeeping rules this morning. Please silence your cell phones. Number one. Number two, if you have any questions, please put it in the app for this session. So we'll be going over those at the end. Number three, the session is being recorded, just so everyone knows, so we have playback capabilities in the future. Please identify the exits in the room. We have one to the side, two to the back, and there's another one to the front. And the most important question, where's the restrooms? Right across the hall. So I have the pleasure of introducing our sponsor for this breakout session, which is the Northeast Pennsylvania Alliance, the Apex Accelerator. And I'm pleased to introduce Debbie Langen, who is the Senior International Business Manager. Debbie?
Thank you. Okay, thanks. Good morning. Thanks for having us. My name is Debbie Langen. I'm with the Northeastern Pennsylvania Alliance. We're an economic development agency serving 7 counties in northeastern Pennsylvania, with our office being located in Pittston. Under our business services, we have 3 core ones: international business, exporting assistance. We also have small business financing, and our Apex Accelerator, which is our government contracting department. I'm very happy that today the Apex Accelerator is sponsoring today's event, and specifically this session, so thank you for having us, and enjoy. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everybody. Hello. Oh, I love when that happens. Thank you. Hi, everybody. How are we enjoying Empower so far? Are we liking it? Good. I have to say, being in a room of so many amazing and powerful women has been nothing short of inspiring for me, and we're only halfway through the day. If you don't know me, my name is Shannie, Mohammed. I'm the Director of Economic Development at the Greater Wyoming Valley Chamber of Commerce over in Wilkes-Barre, and I'm so excited to be moderating today's panel on how we as young professionals can be breaking our barriers and unleashing our most untapped potential. As I stand here, I'm 25 years old, and in my role, I get to oversee my organization's entrepreneurial and economic development efforts. So when it comes to my work, I like to consider myself a social innovator, right? So my job is to build and lead solutions to our region's most pressing social and economic issues, and whether that be in workforce, innovation, business development. And so finding a way to do all of those things as a young professional can be both a really energizing and a really daunting task. And what you'll come to find out is that when you find the right way to balance all of those feelings and emotions, you can do some pretty incredible things, right? And so that's why I'm so lucky to be here, so lucky to be sharing this stage with an amazing panel of young professionals who are each doing great things for our region. So I really want to give them a chance to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what they do right now in their roles. So I think we'll dive right in. We'll start with my immediate left and work our way down.
Sounds like a plan. Hi, everybody. My name is Ceccoli. I am the Executive Assistant to the President and CEO at the Scranton Area Community Foundation. I am 24 years old. Probably the most distinct way I can describe my job is I'm really good at keeping the train on the tracks and on time. So I really excel within time management, prioritization of, different board activities, and really trying to make sure we're doing what we need to do when we need to do it. I'm really excited to be up here with some really wonderful women. I was honored to be asked to speak today. It is inspiring to be in a room full of other young professionals who are doing the same types of things and who are working the same types of jobs, and I'm excited to learn from one another.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Glynis Johns. I am the founder and CEO of the Black Scranton Project, which is a 501c3 nonprofit in Scranton, PA. We are dedicated to archiving, celebrating, and sharing the local African American history, not just of Scranton, but northeastern PA. I am 30 years old, and that is pretty much what I do. If I'm not working on cultural, historical, arts, archiving work, then I'm roller skating or trying to be a DJ. But besides those things, that's pretty much what I do. We have a historic bank in North Scranton that we're transforming into a cultural center, the Black Scranton Project Center for Arts and Culture. So I pretty much spend 99% of my day there trying to rehabilitate, revitalize, and restore the historic bank to be a community space where we can make an archival space, an event space, a space for us to gather and have cool things there. And so my goal is to make the Center for Arts and Culture, the Schomburg Center for Black Research, which is in Harlem, the equivalent of that here in northeastern PA. So we have a long way to go, but I think we will get there soon in the future.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kelley Laird. I am the retail branch manager of Fidelity Bank's downtown Scranton office. I am the oldest young professional on this panel at 34. Just turned 34 a few weeks ago. But as part of my position, I oversee all the management of my financial center branch to make sure that it is running and operating properly. In my spare time, I teach dance at Ballet Theater Scranton, and some of my students are in the room, which is exciting to see them here today because they will be young professionals soon. And I'm trying to think the rest of my time. I spend a lot of time volunteering. I am a chamber influencer. I am on the board of Scranton Tomorrow, on the board of Ballet Theater. I love being involved in my community. I work at a community bank, and it's very important to me. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here and to be as active as I am in the community that I live in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies, for offering your time to be here today. And I want to jump right into my first question, if that's cool. And you all took a moment, you shared a lot about your present, what you're doing now, right? But I want to know a little bit about your past and your future. So if you could, I'd love if you could share a bit about how you got to where you are right now and what you might want to be when you grow up.
Absolutely. I can, talk about the things that I have no idea what's happening tomorrow, let alone, when I grow up. I have always been involved in the nonprofit sector. I spent about 10, 11 years of my life heavily involved in in the animal welfare world, and became really familiar with my current place of employment through grant writing and, being very involved in one of our projects, the NEPA Animal Welfare Collaborative. And I think that was really what brought me to prioritizing my community in the way that I do now. But, I think something that I'd like to mention is that I had no idea when I graduated college what I was going to do. This was my first job out of college, and I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do once I graduated. My degree is in business administration. It's very, general. I was not specific in what I studied because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I still don't. I make it a priority to not put myself in a box and to not, be like, oh, this is what's going to happen tomorrow. I really try to embrace whatever path and whatever opportunity the universe gives me. I think that's really important, especially when you're just starting out in your career. You don't know what is going to come to you. I never imagined that I would be where I'm at, never thought I'd be asked to speak on panels or anything like this. So I think it is important to not put yourself in that box and to not beholden yourself to the ideas you might have right now.
So for me, it's kind of a full circle moment, because when I was in college, I thought I was going to leave and just live my life in New York City. I got my bachelor's and my master's in sociology, so I thought I would just be a cool sociology professor teaching photography, just going to art shows, going to museums, just living New York City life. But I started doing research on why people of color in Scranton are seen as transient. Why are Black folks not seen as residents in the city of Scranton? So that took me on a deep dive into learning more about my culture, where I'm from. And in 2017, I moved back to Scranton, and that's pretty much snowballed into becoming the nonprofit that I am fostering currently. And so with that, I feel like it's a labor of love, but I feel like the area pulled me back to be able to start sharing stories that other people did not have the ability to do. And so for me now, having lived what feels like several lives and having so many different careers at this point, I feel like when I grow up, I want to continue to keep being like a change maker. I want to continue to keep inspiring people. I want to be an innovator of sorts. I want to inspire other people to take up their arts, passions, and their just any sort of creative thing. I want people from this area to feel like where we're from is cool. You can be proud of your hometown whether you decide to stay here or not, but there's a place for you, and you can take up space, and you can be just as involved as anyone else. And so for me, that's what I want to be when I grow up. I always see myself as that old lady who's sitting downtown Scranton at the square or something and being like, come here, baby, come here, let me tell you all about Scranton. And just like not stop talking. Like, I'm a conversationalist, I love to talk, and I see myself as like the community grandma who's just like, oh, there goes Glynis, she's gonna talk your ear off, just like she's cute, just listen to her. So, you know, maybe when I'm 90, I'll be doing that, I don't know, so.
When I went to college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do then either. So I dabbled in a few different majors. I tried psychology, I tried education, I tried a couple different things. And I ended up in hospitality management because I was good at it. And I loved being around people. And that put me in a 9-year career in hospitality management. I started as an intern, worked my way up to a dual director of sales, overseeing 2 properties, a Marriott and an independent. COVID happened, and things got a little shaky in hospitality, and I thought, I don't know if this is for me anymore. So at 31, I made a major career change and found myself in banking. Banking is basically hospitality, but you just sell something different. It's my easiest way to explain it. I remember I thought I was going to go part-time. I applied for a care center part-time position, and the girl in HR called me and she's like, why? And I was like, I don't know banking. And she's like, yeah, no. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I interviewed with these 2 wonderful women sitting in front of me, and I got the job, and it was a major switch for me, and I loved it. And Jill and I say all the time, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but for right now, this is what I love, and this is what I do. Like I said, I teach dance on the side with a group of wonderful people. I event plan on the side with doing weddings and everything like that. So I like to keep an active lifestyle. I like to do a lot of different things that interest me, and it kind of keeps my mind going to be able to do anything I want to do. And so I always, when we talked, we had a nice conversation, all of us, a few weeks ago, and I said, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and it's okay to have that career change, and it's okay to not be certain, and it's okay if you're scared, but try what you love and see what your passions are and just be who you are, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And on my end, in college, I was an engineering major for 3/4 of my time in college, turned business student. So there is no bigger 180 than that. But it's all about sort of trying new things and embracing the parts of yourself that you discover and seeing where that leads you. I mean, that major change that I had is what ultimately led me to the internship, that led me to that job that I now hold today. And I couldn't be happier, truthfully. And I think it's so important, and I love that you all sort of touched on this when you were addressing it. It's so important to keep asking that question, that what do you want to be when you grow up question. I know it gets a few laughs every time we say it, but at some point in our lives, as we grow up, people stop asking us that. But if we're doing all of these things, if we're embracing the unknown, if we're, not putting ourselves in a box, being role models, if we're leading these rooms that we've never expected that we would be in, how could we ever possibly stop growing? And so the answer to that question could change every single time, and it should. And so it's a really interesting phenomenon, I feel like, these stories that we tell ourselves about our age and how it kind of plays into the roles that we find ourselves in our future, especially compared to what everyone around us tells us about our age, right? There's the stories we tell ourselves, there's the stories that everyone else tells us about ourselves, but then there's the truth right in the middle about, do we actually feel like we belong in the spaces that we're in? And Kelley, I remember when we were first chatting about the things that we wanted to discuss here today, you had made a statement about your age and how sometimes it made you feel like you're not actually a young professional. That's a story you were telling yourself about your age. And even myself, I started doing this work in March of 2020, so that was just 2 weeks before quarantine. I was 21 years old, right out of college, and I didn't have this luxury of easing into my role, right? You know, I had to assume these leadership positions very quickly after I started there, and I had this feeling that I was underqualified because I was in rooms with people that had years and years of experience on me. But that was a story I was telling myself about my age. That was not the truth about how I see myself belonging in all of these spaces that I was in. And so I don't think that we can have a conversation as young professionals without acknowledging the presence of imposter syndrome in our lives. Who here has felt that? Yep, sounds about right. I experience imposter syndrome more often than I would like to admit, but I do want to just make this point and show just how often it shows up in our lives, and when it does show up, how deeply that runs and intersects into everything that we do. So to all of our panelists, do you mind sharing some scenarios of when you yourself have felt like an imposter? So Kelley, do you want to start with you this time?
Sure. So I work in banking. Banking has always been known as a male-dominated field. I am lucky and grateful to be in a very female-dominated bank. My boss is a female. Her boss is a female. Her boss is a female. Most of our branch managers are female. So you go into this world where everyone is in a dark-colored suit and they're all older white men, and you're like, oh, okay, hi. And you want to just take a step back and not take a seat at the table. But we deserve a seat at the table. And at Fidelity, we see that with the women who are in power there. And I'm grateful to have that opportunity. And I think that's probably the most prevalent for me now in that situation of saying imposter syndrome, where as women, we deserve a seat at the table. As young professionals, we deserve a seat at the table. And we shouldn't let anyone tell us otherwise.
You know, it's funny. Thank you. It's funny.
The story.
When we first met, I told a story. This was a couple weeks after I had attended a meeting with the Department of Treasury at City Hall. The foundation was invited. Our COO, Maggie, had asked me to attend with her. I was like, yeah, of course. I'll go down to City Hall, and I had never been to a meeting at City Hall. I didn't know what I was walking into. So I get up in the morning. I don't know if you can tell, but I love color. And I really use my clothes to, it is a form of self-expression. It's hard for me to buy into the, blue-black suit. If that's your thing, more power to you. My thing is bright colors and, always somehow trying to draw attention to myself through my clothes. So I woke up in the morning and I put on these bright orange pants. I had a black and white top on that had cats on it, and it's more mature than it sounds. But I really, I walked out of the house. I felt great about myself that day. I loved my outfit. I was like, this is great. I get to City Hall and I walk into the room. It is just older men and older women in black and blue suits. Mayor Paige Cognetti is there. I don't know anybody there, and I'm frantically texting our COO, where are you? I don't know where to sit. I don't know what is happening. So I end up tucking myself back into a corner and, sitting away from everybody. I just did not feel like it was a room I belonged in. And strictly because I'm 24 and I was wearing a bright orange pair of pants. I felt like I walked into that room and nobody took me seriously. And my COO walked in, and Mayor Paige Cognetti actually, was like, oh, Maggie, come sit next to me. And, I was sitting in that room just not feeling like I was supposed to be there. It doesn't help that I am the clumsiest person on the face of the planet. If you were here in the room before we started, there is a gap between the stage and the wall, and I did almost fall into it. So I ended up elbowing my coffee right behind me, threw my coat on it like it was on fire, and was like, I hope to God nobody saw that. At the end of the meeting, my COO, Maggie, comes up to me and she's like, "You look mad." I said, "I'm not having a good day." And I was telling her, I was like, "Yeah, I just really don't feel like I belonged in this room." And, then we had a couple people come up to us and, people were specifically asking my advice and, "Oh, what do you think of this?" And, it felt like once it was over, I didn't feel like that anymore. And then I went up to somebody from the city. I went, "Listen, I dumped my coffee all over the table. I hope to God nobody saw it." Made a big joke about it and everybody was laughing. And I think that whole thing was just, I really felt like was probably the most recent time I felt imposter syndrome in a way that was so kind of earth-shaking. Sometimes you feel imposter syndrome and you can shake yourself out of it, but it was really, it was, I laugh about it now because it was so ridiculous, with the coffee, and I can't walk in a straight line. Like, it's funny now, but at the time I was like, "Oh God, I look ridiculous." And it's funny because during our conversation, I learned that Glynis was actually at that meeting. And when we were having our initial conversation, she was like, "Your outfit was great," Like, it was, you really should, the takeaway from this story is don't let the way that you express yourself on the outside make you feel like you have any less of a seat at the table. If I could do anything differently that day, I would have walked in and I would have sat right at the head of the big conference table, because just because I'm 24 and was in an orange pair of pants does not mean that I did not have the intelligence or the backing to be in that room. We were invited to that meeting for a reason. The mayor, the city, they wanted us in that room. You go and you make yourself known.
And so when Bella told us that story, when we first initially met, I was in that room with you, and I felt slightly similar because I was wearing sneakers, and just for context, I had like a purple something outfit on, more like athletic style. But when I walked into that room, I told myself, I'm just going to be as confident as I possibly can be. I know the context of this meeting is a little bit above my head, but I was invited by Governor Shapiro. He asked me to come to this room because it has benefit to our nonprofit. And so they pulled up a chair. I sat at the boardroom table. Didn't see anything that she had said happen, but I did peep her outfit, and I was like, she looks cute. And she's also young. Like, I was the youngest person there, only black person in the space. And I just sat there and I took in all the information, and then I, said my rounds, and then I left. But for me, in the back of my mind, when I started a PhD program, which I had to drop out because of nonprofit work, but I got into the #1 program for African American studies in the country at Rutgers University, and just knowing that was a lot for me to bear, because I didn't go to school. I have 2 degrees in sociology. Here I am as a history student at the #1 program for African American studies, and I'm figuring it all out myself. I didn't really know what to do, and my mentor and advisor, Dr. Erica Armstrong Dunbar, we had several conversations where I would cry in her office and tell her I don't feel like I'm supposed to be here, and she's like, "Look at your TEDx talk, like, look at all the work you're doing, look at these awards that you're getting, all of these things, like, you have the ability to do these things, you're making history as you are, and it's not imposter syndrome, because are you lying about the work that you're doing? No, you're not. Are you actually doing this work? Yes, you are. Are you doing it with truth, drive, and faith, and everything else? Yeah, you might not be getting it right the first time, but you're not an imposter. You're just having a hard time getting there, and you will be able to do it." And so she said to me, she's like, "Start saying that it's not an imposter. You're learning, because an imposter is someone who's a liar and someone who's not supposed to be in those spaces. You are supposed to be in those spaces. But sometimes it doesn't feel that way, and sometimes you do have to add a little bit of armor, and sometimes you do have to remind yourself, and sometimes you're not going to be the biggest fish in the room. You might be the smallest person, and that's really okay. But a lot of the times, especially as women and black women, we feel like we have to do so much more to be in these spaces, when in fact, like, being there is way more than enough. And I think we put so much pressure on ourselves, and we have a lot of external factors that make us feel like we need to present ourselves in a certain way, when really your authentic self is the biggest thing that you can do. It's the biggest thing to break barriers. It's the biggest thing to create change, or also assert yourself, or push your company forward and all these things. And so for her telling me that, that's immediately, this is like 2019, that immediately shifted the way that I thought about what imposter syndrome looks like, what imposter syndrome looks like on me. And so I don't claim that anymore because I don't feel like I'm an imposter. Yes, there's no one around me who's building a nonprofit from the ground up, but I'm doing it. And it hurts and it struggles and it's a lot, but I'm not an imposter. I'm a nonprofit leader, I'm a CEO, I'm a young Black woman, I'm here from Scranton, and I'm doing the work for my community because I feel like it's important. And just because someone doesn't feel like the work I'm doing isn't important, doesn't mean that it's not. And so I hope that whatever realm you're in, that you take that and apply it into your life because it will actually change the outcome in a lot of the spaces that you're in. So that's all I kind of have to say on that.
All right, well, thank you. That was beautifully said. And it's really interesting to think about it, and Bella, you touched on it a little bit too. It's crazy to think back in hindsight on those situations because once you get past them, you suddenly have like this massively clearer head, right? You realize just how capable you were of getting through those moments, and it was just that in your inner critic, right? We heard it a couple times today, that inner critic that's telling you that you weren't. So following up on each of those scenarios, what would you have done differently to combat that? I know, Bella, you had said that you wish you did this thing or you wish you did that thing. If you could go back in time, what would you have done differently to break those barriers for yourself and empower yourself to actually make it through those situations in a better way?
I mean, truthfully, I think I would have sat at the table and I wouldn't have tucked myself back into a corner, you know? That meeting was probably, in all honesty, one of the very few times I have tucked myself into a corner in a meeting like that. You know, it's not something, if you want to, in this world, you need to be the person who's going to stand up and who's going to sit at that table. You know, it's 2024. We're not, you know, we don't have to play the game of making ourselves smaller to, you know, please the guy who's been in the industry for 30 years. Just because he's been in the industry for 30 years doesn't mean he knows more than you. Sometimes that's really not the truth. You know, I have been around a lot of people who, you know, like to make other people seem small, and that's where they really derive some of their, you know, some of their self-worth and power, you know, from making themselves feel like they're the biggest in the room. And when you are so familiar with people like that, at some point you have to make it a point to be like, no, I don't really, it doesn't really do it for you. He's got 30 years in the industry. You want to sit there and be just as big and tall and powerful as he is. Maybe not in stature, but in the way that you're going to present yourself and the way that you're going to act in that meeting is going to be just as impactful as he is. So I think that, you know, in that long, not sure if that answer was coherent, but in that long-winded answer, go in there and take up that space. You have worked hard to get where you're at. Your age does not matter. You could be just as intelligent and impactful as the person who's got 30 years of experience in the field. Sometimes you're not gonna, but sometimes you are. Go in there and take up the space that you deserve. Ask for the things you deserve. Know what your worth is in the workplace, because you don't deserve to put up with, you know, disrespect, not getting the bare minimum. You know, go in and take up the space because you worked hard to be where you're at.
I think it's also, what I'm getting out of also a part of what you're saying is, don't second guess yourself. We all know our strengths. You know what you're good at. You know what you excel at. So hone them and go out and do them and be the best person in the room. And maybe there is someone with more experience than you, but work on those things and just be better. And don't second guess that you're not good enough to be there, because you are good enough to be there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll just add briefly to, don't second guess yourself, and you might not get it right the first time, and that shouldn't be that shouldn't deter you from doing it, because the only way you learn is to kind of mess up a few times. The only way to learn is to stumble. And like I kind of mentioned before in my long little monologue, that those are part of growing and getting better, because all of those people who are perceived big people in the room, they've had those moments. You just haven't seen them because you're new to the space. And that shouldn't limit you. So like these two ladies were saying, like all of those things combined will help progress you forward in whatever space that you want to take up. It truly doesn't matter. Part of it is believing in yourself, because if you can't see it for you, no one else can see it. It starts within. And so once you see yourself, even before you become that thing, you have to say to yourself that you are that thing, and you go into that space and then embody that. And I promise you, it will work. It will really help the way that you put yourself out there and the way that people will perceive you. You have to take that moment in yourself to believe it first.
Believing in yourself is huge. I mean, betting on yourself, like how do you expect anyone else around you to believe in you and your capabilities and give you a shot if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't invest in yourself? If you're willing to gamble and say, I'm capable enough to do this, you're that much more on your way to being in these spaces that you want to be in. I think about what I do for myself all the time. We talked a little bit about imposter syndrome, right? What better way to combat imposter syndrome than by teaching yourself all these things that you say you don't know how to do? I have no clue how to do my job. Well, let me invest in a training for myself. The more I learn about what I'm actually supposed to be doing my job, it's going to raise my confidence. It's going to make me feel like I'm meant to be there. I was always meant to be there. But it's counteracting, it's tricking my brain into realizing I can absorb this information just like I learned it yesterday. And so I get to invest in myself in a lot of ways. I go after certification programs, I travel a ton. Cultural training is just as important. Fellowship programs, these ways that you can invest in yourself and actually learn the things that you need to be successful in your roles and what you might want to do in future roles. It doesn't even have to apply to you right now. These future dreams, your what do you want to be when you grow up sort of statements, you can be working on those things right now through ways like that. And so on those same scenarios, I want to flip the script a little bit. Put yourself on the other side of that table, right? What do you wish that somebody did for you? So like if you were in those rooms and you saw others in those situations, what could you have done for them?
Want to go? Yeah, I can take it. I feel bad I'm the one talking first.
It goes down.
Yeah. So I think that what I make it a point to do, I'll talk about a story from one of our, the Scranton Area Community Foundation convenes the Women in Philanthropy. It's a project that we really work to empower women and their families. We've got a couple different programs that we really work to help women who are in bad situations, who need financial literacy classes. We've got a booth out there if you want to learn more. It's a great program. But one at our annual event where we go through all of the accomplishments in the past year. We have previous, match savings participants come and speak. It's a really impactful event. I had a young woman my age. She came in, I signed her in. She looked familiar to me, but I couldn't place from where. And she goes upstairs where all the refreshments are. We're at Posh in Scranton. She goes and gets a drink. She ends up coming back down and she sits next to me at the registration table and we're just talking. And she tells me that she's nervous. She doesn't know anybody. So my immediate thought, my colleague, Rebecca, is in the audience. I was like, oh, you know what? I am busy registering people, but I'm going to connect her with Rebecca. And Rebecca, the social butterfly she is going to take her and introduce her to everybody. And I didn't even have to ask her to do it. She just took her and introduced her to everybody on the planet, So I think that trying to connect, I might not be the person who's going to be the social butterfly introducing everybody. And, I might not be that person, but I can get you with that person because I know several of them, So I think that helping to try to connect other young women with the right people and getting them in the right situations is how, what I hope somebody would continue to do for me and what I hope to continue to do for other young professionals.
For me, this is a kind of a difficult question because I'm like a go-getter. Like, I'll seek out the things and seek out the people. Like, if I'm looking for something, I will do my best to find it. But I have had people surround me with support. Right now in my life, I feel like just being able to give somebody your business card, say, hey, reach out if you have any questions or if you just want to chat off record. Those types of encounters are super helpful for me, especially when I meet another woman or somebody else in the nonprofit field and they're like, hey, if you have any questions, you just want to chat, you want to grab coffee, just talk about anything, I'm here to listen. And for me, that is very helpful, and I try to also lend that to other people, especially young people. I really do love to support young Black girls who are going into high school or even college, because I didn't really have that support. I'm a first-generation college student. I have more degrees than anyone in my family. I've been doing so many more things than a lot of people around me have, and so for me, I wish I had somebody I can talk to about what is it like going to school, what is it like when you feel like this, or how do you navigate a new city by yourself, just certain little questions like that. So I try to make myself available for other young people around me to feel like they have a support, whether they reach out to you or not. Honestly, I feel like when you just let that door be open, someone might walk through or they might not, but it does also, that layer of support makes someone feel a little bit more confident to go after whatever their professional goal is, whatever it is that they're looking for. So maybe throughout the rest of this conference, maybe try that out with somebody around you, or maybe push yourself out there a little bit to ask somebody that you think would be able to help you professionally, and you might be surprised. They might want to go get coffee to you, have a little Zoom meeting, or answer a couple questions that you might have.
And for me, I'd say I'm very lucky to be surrounded by great mentors. I grew up taking dance from my sister, Joanne Arduino, and she was the most amazing mentor growing up. At work, I have great mentors that I look up to, and I just try to take what they've taught me over the years and give back to the people who I can, whether it's my students, whether it's my employees, whoever that might be, that I can make that impact that they made on me, to let them know that they're not alone and they can do it, and this is how to be successful. And like you said, you might crawl before you walk, but we'll get you there, and it doesn't matter how long it takes. But I think I try to take that aspect because I have been very lucky with great people in my life who have always supported me, my mother included. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about her. But I think doing that for other people and trying to be there for them when they need you and just be that support system and that person they look up to, that they could get to where they want to be because you're helping them do that. So
I know we're running out of time, but I just want to say this last story in this conference setting. So I mentioned my advisor for college, Dr. Erica Armstrong Dunbar. She's done a lot of groundbreaking research. If you've seen the movie Harriet, if you've seen Gilded Age, she's the consulting historian, all that work. So I went to a conference and I knew I wanted to reach out to her because her book was so influential to me, literally changed the way I thought about history. So she's at this conference, I go up to her, I talk to her, I'd left my book in my room, but I went and bought the last copy that they had on her book stand, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so grateful to meet you. Your book is so inspiring to me. This is who I am, da-da-da-da. Can you sign it? She's like, oh, yes, great. And she's like, are you thinking about going to grad school? I said, I really do. I'm applying now. I don't really know if it's going to be sociology or history. And she signed my book, and she wrote, best of luck with your PhD journey or something. So I'm applying to all these schools, and I'm writing in there, like, who I want to work with. And then a year and a half later, who am I working with? Dr. Erica Armstrong Dunbar. Because I took the time to tell her how much she's inspiring to me, tell her my journey. And when I told her this in her office years later, she's like, oh, I kind of remember that, but like, I don't know, you also presented yourself in a way, but she didn't necessarily remember that, but when she was later on going through application things, she saw my drive, she saw my passion. So don't be afraid to talk to the people who might change your life. You literally never know. And so, yeah, at a conference setting, I met her. She signed a second copy of this book. She also came to Scranton to talk about her book years later. So again, do not be afraid to reach out to the people who inspire you, because those little tiny things actually will manifest into something bigger. So that's all I wanted to add.
No, that was actually the perfect way to transition into our closing, right? Because that's the best part. You know, part of your development as a young professional is breaking through your fear of asking for help. or your fear of looking like someone who doesn't know enough to be in these rooms that they're in. If you don't embrace that feeling, the real barrier, the whole point of this conversation, the real barrier ends up being yourself. And so none of us would be in this room today if we didn't care about developing our young professionals, empowering our women. And so we have a ton of support in this room. You have a ton of support around you. So to anyone in here who feels like they don't know where to start, ask for help. Find a mentor, ask questions, be open to learning from anyone and everyone possible. And I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but I can speak on behalf of myself and on behalf of this incredible panel of ladies that I've had the pleasure of sharing the stage with today. We all showed up here today with the intention of sticking around and helping you to build the best versions of yourself that you can possibly be in whatever stages of your life that you're in. And so the fact that you all showed up here today shows me that you must be ready for that too. So give yourselves a round of applause for that. And let's keep that applause going for our amazing panelists. Thank you so much. And I know we're short on time, but do we have time for like one question, two?
We do have one in the app, so we do have a few minutes here. So the question is, how do you make your voice heard as a young professional trying to grow?
I can say from my own experience, keep talking. Go to the spaces, share what you have to share. I know when I started out, I would just go to community events and say, here's the Black Scranton Project, here's the research that I want you to hear. Who wants to listen? And just put yourself in those rooms and start talking about the things that you want people to hear, and someone's gonna listen.
Yeah, I think I'll echo that. Keep talking and the right people will hear you. I don't think there's a better way, that's a great way to put it. You, at some point, if you keep going to places, you keep introducing yourself, you keep talking, the right people are gonna hear you. You're gonna get in front of the people you need to, and you're really going to be heard. You will find that group who is going to hear you.
I think with what Glynis and Bella just said, you have to be confident enough to do that and just trust yourself and have that confidence and just do it. Like we heard in the morning panel, if you don't ask the question, it's already a no. Just ask it. Just do it. Go out there and say what you have to say.
And I would even say that having this type of dialogue is probably the first step, right? We don't even know what we have to do. We don't even know if we're creating the right environment, the right inclusive environment, unless we're sharing conversations like this. I can't tell you how many times I've been taken under my boss's wing or my mentor's wing or my coworker's wing, right? And they've helped me feel supported in these really new environments and in really difficult situations. And even myself, I find that I've probably grown the most as a leader when I've done that for others. So I think if there is ever any starting point for doing that, it's scenarios like this one.
Again, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to these amazing panelists for showing up today and giving us your really useful feedback. And also again, thank you again to our sponsor, who is NEPA Alliance, the Apex Accelerator. Enjoy the rest of your day. I know it's going to be lunchtime here real soon. But like they said, don't ever be afraid to ask a question, because the only silly question is the one you don't ask.